As Stanley entered the red room, he could hear X-Ray's voice from all the way across the room. "See what I'm saying?" X-Ray said. "Am I right? Oh, am I right?" The other bodies in the room were little more than bags of flesh and bones, dumped across broken chairs and couches. X-Ray was full of life, laughing and waving his arms around as he talked. "Yo, caveman, my man," he called out. Stanley made his way across the room. "Hey, slide on over, Squid," said X-Ray. "Make room for the caveman." Stanley crashed on the couch. He had looked for a hidden camera in the shower. He hadn't seen anything, and he hoped the warden hadn't either. "What's the matter?" asked X-Ray. "You guys tired or something?" He laughed. "Hey, keep it down, will you?" growled Zigzag. "I'm trying to watch TV." Stanley glanced uncertainly at Zigzag, who was staring very intently at the busted television screen. The warden greeted the boys at breakfast the next morning and went with them to the halls. 4 dogs in the halls, and 3 tended to the wheelbarrows. "Glad you're here, X-Ray," she said to him. "We need your sharp eyes." Stanley spent more time pushing the wheelbarrow than digging, because he was such a slow digger. He carted away the excess dirt and dumped it into previously dug holes. He was careful not to dump any of it in the hole where the gold tube was actually found. He could still see the tube in his mind. It seemed so familiar, but he just couldn't place it. He thought that it might have been the lead to the fancy gold pen. KB could have been the initial of the famous author. The only famous authors he could think of were Charles Dickens, William Shakespeare, and Mark Twain. Besides, it didn't really look like the top of a pen. By lunchtime, the warden was beginning to lose her patience. She made them eat quickly so they could get back to work. "If you can't get them to work any faster," she told Mr. Sir, "then you are going to have to climb down there and dig with them." After that, everyone worked faster, especially when Mr. Sir was watching them. Stanley practically ran when he pushed his wheelbarrow. Mr. Sir reminded them they were Girl Scouts. They didn't quit digging until after every other group had finished. Later, as Stanley sat sprawled across an understuffed chair, he tried to think of a way to tell the warden where the tube was really found, without getting himself or X-Ray into trouble. It didn't seem possible. He even thought about sneaking out at night and digging in that hole by himself. But the last thing he wanted to do after digging all day was to dig at night too. Besides, the shovels were locked up at night, presumably so they couldn't be used as weapons. Mr. Pendersky entered the rec room. "Stanley," he called as he made his way to him. "His name is Caveman," said X-Ray. "Stanley," said Mr. Pendersky. "My name is Caveman," said Stanley. "Well, I have a letter here for someone named Stanley Yelnich," said Mr. Pendersky. He turned over an envelope in his hands. "It doesn't say Caveman anywhere." Thanks," Stanley said, taking it. It was from his mother. "Who's it from?" Skid asked. "Your mother?" Stanley put it in his big pocket of his pants. "Aren't you going to read it to us?" asked Aunt Pete. "Give him some space," said X-Ray. "If Caveman doesn't want to read it to us, he doesn't have to. It's probably from his girlfriend." Stanley smiled. He read it later, after the other boys had gone to dinner. "Dear Stanley, it was wonderful to hear from you. Your letter made me feel like one of the other moms who can afford to send their kids to summer camp. I know it's not the same, but I'm very proud of you for trying to make the best of a bad situation. Who knows, maybe something good will come of this. Your father thinks he's a real close to breakthrough on his sneaker project. I hope so. The landlord is threatening to evict us because of the order. I feel sorry for the little old lady who lives in the shoe. it must have smelled awful. Nor from both of us. What's so funny? Zero asked. It startled him. He thought Zero had gone to dinner with the others. Nothing, just something my mom wrote. What would she say? Zero asked.
You can pretend you found it first thing in the morning. Then
Well,
you
see,
can get the whole day
my dad
off
is trying to
instead of
invent
just
a
an
way to
hour or
recycle
so
old
this
sneakers.
afternoon.
So the apartment kind of smells bad. Because it's always cooking these old sneakers. So anyway, in the letter, my mom said she felt sorry for that little old lady who lived in the shoe. You know, because it must have smelled bad in there. Zero stared blankly at him. You know the nursery rhyme. Zero said nothing. You've heard the nursery rhyme about the little old lady who lived in a shoe. No, Stanley was amazed. How does it go? Asked Zero. Didn't you ever watch Sesame Street? Stanley asked. Zero stared blankly. Stanley had it on the dinner. He would have felt pretty silly reciting nursery rhymes at Camp Green Lake. For the next week and a half, the boys continued to dig in, and around the area where X-ray had supposedly found the gold tube. They widened the X-ray's hole, as well as holes Armpit and Squid had been digging, until the fourth day, when all three holes met and formed one big hole. As the days wore on, the warden became less and less patient. She arrived later in the morning and left earlier in the afternoon. Meanwhile, the boys continued to dig later and later. This is no bigger than it was when I left you yesterday, she said after arriving later one morning, well, after sunrise. What have you been doing down there? Nothing, said Squid. It was the wrong thing to say. At just that moment, Uppy was returning from a bathroom break.